I'm Mason, 34 years old, and the proud owner of my 3-bedroom house that I worked my butt off to buy. My sister Tiffany is 30 and recently got engaged to her boyfriend Derek after dating for just 8 months. Last week, she showed up at my door unannounced, saying she needed to discuss something important. That's something important? She wanted my master bedroom. Not to visit. To have. Permanently. The kicker? She'd already given notice on her apartment because she assumed I'd say yes. Before I dive into this mess, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to join our community of real talk and life lessons. I've always been the responsible sibling. While Tiffany was partying through college and changing majors 3 times, I was working 60-hour weeks at a tech startup, living in a tiny studio apartment, and saving every penny I could. For 8 years, I lived on ramen and drove a car that broke down so often the local mechanic and I became Christmas card friends. My dream was always to own my own home, something stable, something mine. 2 years ago, that dream finally came true. I found this 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools nearby, thinking long-term, a backyard big enough for the dog I've always wanted, and most importantly, a master bedroom with potential. The previous owners had neglected it, but I could see what it could become. After closing on the house, I spent another 6 months renovating that bedroom myself. Nights, weekends, holidays, I was in there installing hardwood floors, building a custom walk-in closet, and completely redoing the ensuite bathroom with a rainfall shower and double vanity. I even added French doors leading to a small balcony overlooking the backyard and the sunset. It's not just a bedroom, it's the sanctuary I earned. Tiffany and I used to be close growing up. Being only 4 years apart, we shared toys, secrets, and later clothes. Well, she took mine. But as adults, we've drifted in opposite directions. I focused on building a career and financial stability, while Tiffany has always expected things to work out for her without much effort. Our parents didn't help matters. As the baby of the family and the only girl, Tiffany was coddled. When she wrecked her first car, our parents bought her another. When she couldn't pay her credit card bills, they covered them. When she got fired from her 3rd job in 2 years for chronic tardiness, Mom defended her, saying her creative spirit wasn't made for conventional work hours. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister. She's fun, spontaneous, and can light up a room with her personality. But there's always been this undercurrent of entitlement that's gotten worse as we've gotten older. When Tiffany met Derek 10 months ago, I was happy for her. He seemed like a decent guy, stable job as an accountant, polite, and grounded in a way my sister isn't. They moved fast, dating for only 8 months before getting engaged 2 months ago. The wedding is planned for next spring, and while I thought it seemed rushed, I kept those thoughts to myself and congratulated them sincerely. What I never expected was for their engagement to somehow involve my house. My master bedroom isn't just a place I sleep. It's the reward for years of sacrifice. The custom California king bed faces the eastern window so the morning light wakes me naturally. The walk-in closet has built-in organization systems that keep everything in its place. The bathroom features heated tile floors and that rainfall shower that makes every morning feel like a spa day. The small balcony has just enough room for a chair where I drink my coffee and watch the neighborhood wake up. When I first showed Tiffany my house after the renovations, she'd whistled and said, "Pretty fancy for a bachelor pad, bro." I'd laughed it off, proud of what I'd created. Never did I imagine she'd later decide it was too good for me and better suited for her. That day when she showed up at my door, I was in the middle of a work-from-home day, coding a new feature for my company's software. Her knocking was insistent, almost frantic. When I opened the door, she burst in with an energy that immediately put me on edge. "Mason, you're never going to believe what happened," she said, dropping her designer purse on my couch without taking off her shoes. "Derek's landlord is selling his building, and we have to be out in 60 days. It's like the universe is telling us something, you know?" I offered sympathy and suggested some apartment complexes I knew had vacancies. That's when her expression changed from frantic to calculated, a look I recognized from childhood when she was about to ask for something big. Actually, she said, drawing out the word, I've been thinking. Your house has 3 bedrooms, and you only use one. It's silly for us to pay rent somewhere else when you have all this extra space. At first, I thought she was asking to rent one of my spare bedrooms temporarily. That would have been a reasonable request, and despite my preference for living alone, I might have considered it to help family. But that's not what Tiffany was asking for at all. So I was thinking, Tiffany continued, walking through my living room and toward the hallway that led to the bedrooms. Your master suite would be perfect for us. I followed her, confused. For a visit? She laughed, that light, airy laugh she uses when she thinks someone is being deliberately obtuse. No, silly. To live. Derek and I need more space than your guest rooms. We're engaged now. We're starting our lives together. I stopped in the hallway, processing what she was suggesting. Tiffany, that's my bedroom. I know, but it's way too nice for just one person, she said, already opening my bedroom door without asking permission. She walked in like she was giving a tour. Look at this space. King bed, walk-in closet, private bath, balcony, it's perfect for a couple. You could take the room at the end of the hall. It's still nice, and you're just one person. The casual way she dismissed my ownership of my own home left me momentarily speechless. Tiffany took my silence as an opportunity to continue her sales pitch. Derek and I would pay rent, of course. We were thinking $400 a month for the master. That's fair, right? Since we'd be sharing the rest of the house. And we'd want to repaint, I'm thinking a soft blush color for the walls. Derek's not sold on it yet, but he'll come around. Finally finding my voice, I said, Tiffany, I'm not giving up my bedroom. This is my house. I renovated that room myself. If you and Derek need a place to stay temporarily, you could use one of the guest rooms, but… Mason, she interrupted, her tone shifting to something harder. You don't need all this. She gestured around the room. It's wasteful. Derek and I are starting our life together. We need the space. The closet alone would barely fit both our clothes, but we'd make it work. The answer is no, Tiff. I'm sorry about your housing situation, but I already gave notice at my apartment. She cut in, her voice rising. We have to be out in 30 days. The revelation hit me like a bucket of cold water. You what? Why would you do that before talking to me? Because I knew you'd help us. You're my brother. Family helps family. Her eyes were wide, a mixture of expectation and growing anger. What am I supposed to do now? Live on the street? That's not fair. You made an assumption and a decision without consulting me. There are plenty of apartments available. You and Derek have jobs. You can find a place. Tiffany's face flushed red. We're saving for the wedding. We can't afford market rent right now. Not with everything else we're paying for. You have all this extra space in your house that you don't even use. I do use it. I live here. It's my home that I worked for years to buy. You're being selfish. She snapped, tears starting to well in her eyes. A warning sign I recognized from childhood. Tiffany was preparing to escalate. I've always been there for you. I can't believe you leave your own sister without a place to live just because you want to keep a bedroom that's too big for you anyway. That's not what's happening here. I tried to reason. You made plans assuming you could have part of my house without asking me. That's not how this works. Fine, she said, grabbing her purse. I'm calling Mom and Dad. They'll make you see reason. Family is supposed to help family, Mason. I guess you forgot that while you were off becoming so successful and buying your precious house. Before I could respond, she stormed toward my front door. We need to be out in 30 days. Think about what kind of brother you want to be. With that parting shot and a slam of the door that rattled my windows, she was gone. I stood in my living room, stunned by what had just happened. The entitlement was breathtaking. I tried calling her to continue the conversation more calmly, but she sent me straight to voicemail. Instead, I received a text. I'm too upset to talk to you right now. I can't believe you'd do this to me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, wondering if I was being unreasonable. Was I being selfish for not wanting to give up my bedroom in my own house? The logical part of my brain knew the answer was no, but decades of family dynamics had installed powerful guilt buttons that Tiffany knew exactly how to push. I also couldn't shake the anxiety about what would come next. Tiffany's threat to call our parents wasn't empty. In our family, disagreements never stayed between the involved parties. They became full family affairs, with everyone taking sides and weighing in. And historically, in conflicts between Tiffany and me, my parents had almost always sided with her. By morning, I'd convinced myself that maybe I could find a compromise. Perhaps Tiffany and Derek could stay in one of the guest rooms temporarily while they found a new place. I was drafting a text with this offer when my phone rang. It was my mother. Mason James Mitchell, what is this I hear about you refusing to help your sister? My mother's voice had that particular tone she reserved for when she believed one of her children was being difficult. Tiffany called me in tears last night. I took a deep breath, already feeling defensive. Mom, Tiffany came over yesterday and told me she'd given notice on her apartment because she assumed she could move into my master bedroom. Without asking me first. Well, you do have that big house all to yourself. My mother replied, as if that justified everything. Your sister is getting married. They need to save money for the wedding and their future. You could help them out. By giving them my bedroom? Mom, I bought this house. I renovated that room myself. No one's saying it's not your house, honey. She said in that placating tone that always made me feel like a child. But family helps family. You could move into one of the smaller bedrooms temporarily. It wouldn't kill you. Temporarily? I questioned. Tiffany didn't mention anything about this being temporary. And even if it was, it's still my bedroom in my house. Don't be so selfish, Mason. Your sister needs you. She and Derek are starting their life together. It's different when you're a couple. The implication stung. Because I was single, my space, my comfort, my home somehow mattered less? Before I could form a response, my mother continued. Your father and I think you should all sit down and discuss this reasonably. We're having dinner at our house tomorrow night. 6 o'clock. Don't be late. She hung up before I could protest. Moments later, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. Be nice to your sister, son. Family first. I spent the rest of the day distracted, my work suffering as I tried to process how a boundary as basic as, I don't want to give up my bedroom in my own house, had somehow become a controversial stance that required a family summit to resolve. The next evening, I arrived at my parents' house exactly at 6, steeling myself for what was to come. Tiffany's car was already in the driveway, along with an unfamiliar sedan I assumed belonged to Derek. It would be the first time I'd seen him since this conflict began, and I wondered what version of events Tiffany had shared with him. My mother greeted me with a tight hug. Remember, open mind, she whispered before leading me to the dining room where everyone was already seated. Tiffany sat next to Derek, her eyes slightly red as if she'd been crying recently. My father nodded at me from the head of the table. Mason. Derek stood and extended his hand. He looked uncomfortable, his usual easygoing smile strained at the edges. Good to see you. Dinner began with tense small talk about the weather, my parents' garden, and an upcoming community event. The elephant in the room grew larger with each passing minute until finally, as my mother served dessert, she cleared her throat. So, we should discuss the living situation, she said, looking pointedly at me. Tiffany and Derek need a place to stay since they've given notice on their apartment. I didn't know they'd given notice until Tiffany told me yesterday. I clarified immediately. She made that decision without talking to me first. I thought you'd be happy to help us, Tiffany said, her voice small. You always said if you ever bought a house, there would always be room for family. Yes, as guests. Not giving up my bedroom. My father interjected. Son, no one likes moving rooms, But it's not that big a deal. When your sister needs help. Dad, this isn't about moving rooms, I interrupted, feeling my frustration rise. This is about Tiffany making assumptions about my home and my space without consulting me. She didn't ask if she and Derek could stay in a guest room. She demanded my master bedroom. Not demanded, Tiffany protested. I just pointed out that it makes more sense for a couple to have the larger room with the attached bathroom. You're just one person. It's my house, I repeated, feeling like a broken record. I bought it. I renovated it. Mason, my mother said softly, what if they took the master bedroom but paid a little more in rent? Would that be fair? I looked around the table in disbelief. So the compromise is that I still give up my bedroom, but they pay me for the privilege? Don't be dramatic. Tiffany rolled her eyes. We're family. We should help each other out. Like how you helped me out by giving notice on your apartment before even talking to me? I shot back. Derek, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke up. I want to say that I told Tiffany we should have discussed this with you first. He glanced at my sister, who gave him a sharp look. But we are in a bit of a tight spot now, and we'd appreciate any help. At least Derek seemed embarrassed by the situation, which gave me some hope that one person at the table recognized how inappropriate this all was. What about this? My father proposed, ever the businessman looking for a deal. Tiffany and Derek take the master bedroom for 6 months while they save for their own place. They pay you $500 a month in rent, and they handle the yard work and maintenance around the house. You're still not hearing me, I said, pushing my dessert plate away, my appetite gone. I don't want to give up my bedroom. Not for a month, not for 6 months. It's my personal space in my own home. God, you're so stubborn, Tiffany huffed. This is why you're still single, you know. You can't compromise or think about anyone but yourself. The low blow hung in the air. My mother gasped softly but didn't correct her. My father looked down at his plate. I think I'm going to head home, I said quietly, standing up. Thank you for dinner. Mason, don't leave like this, my mother pleaded. We need to figure this out. Tiffany and Derek need to be out of their apartment in less than a month now. They should start looking for a new apartment then, I replied, grabbing my jacket. They're welcome to stay in one of my guest rooms temporarily while they search. That's the best I can offer. As I walked to the door, I heard Tiffany's voice behind me. See? He doesn't care about family at all. The drive home was a blur of anger and hurt. When I walked into my house that I had worked so hard for, I felt a wave of resentment. Not at the house itself, but at how my family had made me feel guilty for wanting to maintain boundaries within it. I called my friend Ryan, the one person I knew would give me an objective perspective. As I recounted the events of the past 2 days, his incredulous reactions validated what I'd been feeling. Dude, you're not crazy, Ryan assured me. Your sister is completely out of line, and your parents are enabling her. Stand your ground on this one. His support was exactly what I needed to hear. But even as I thanked him and hung up, I knew this conflict was far from over. 3 days after the disastrous family dinner, I was working from home when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Tiffany and Derek standing on my porch, Tiffany holding a measuring tape and Derek looking apologetic. What are you doing here? I asked, blocking the doorway. We need to measure the master bedroom for our furniture, Tiffany said as if it were the most natural request in the world. We need to see if Derek's dresser will fit in the corner, or if we'll need to rearrange. I stared at her in disbelief. Tiffany, I've already told you multiple times that you're not having my bedroom. Don't be difficult, Mason, she replied, trying to peer around me into the house. Mom and Dad already talked to you about this. We need to plan our move. There is no move into my bedroom, I stated firmly. I offered you a guest room temporarily while you find a new place. That's it. Tiffany's face darkened. You can't be serious. Where are Derek and I supposed to go? Our lease is up in 3 weeks now. That's a problem you created when you gave notice without talking to me first, I pointed out. I'm sorry you're in this situation, but giving you my bedroom isn't the solution. You're choosing a room over your sister's well-being? Her voice rose, carrying down the street. A neighbor walking his dog glanced over curiously. I'm enforcing a reasonable boundary in my own home, I replied, keeping my voice level. There's a difference. Come on, Tiff. Derek tugged gently at her arm. Let's go. We can talk about this another time. No. She yanked her arm away. I want to know why my brother thinks his precious bedroom is more important than helping his family. This conversation isn't productive, I said, starting to close the door. Call me when you're ready to discuss realistic options. You'll regret this, Mason. Tiffany called as I shut the door. Everyone's going to see how selfish you really are. True to her word, Tiffany launched what could only be described as a smear campaign. That evening, my phone was flooded with text messages from extended family members. From Aunt Linda. Why won't you help your sister? Family should come first. From Uncle Steve. Heard you're leaving Tiffany and Derek without a place to live. That doesn't sound like you, Mason. From Cousin Rachel. Hey, is everything okay? Tiffany's posting some concerning stuff on Facebook. I checked Tiffany's social media and found a status update that read, finding out who really has your back when you're in need. So heartbroken by someone I thought I could count on. #family showed the family #betrayed. The comments section was filled with vague supportive messages and questions about what happened, which Tiffany answered with equally vague but emotionally charged responses. Just learning that some people care more about material things than their own family. And Derek and I are scrambling to find a place to live with less than a month's notice. Not once did she mention that she had created this situation herself, or that I had offered a guest room. The narrative she was crafting painted me as the villain who was leaving a newly engaged couple homeless out of sheer selfishness. My cousin Emma, who had always been close to both Tiffany and me, called the next day. Unlike the others, she wanted to hear my side. Tiffany's telling everyone you refused to help her and Derek when their landlord suddenly evicted them, she said. But that doesn't sound like you. I explained the actual situation, Tiffany's demand for my bedroom, her having already given notice before speaking to me, my offer of a guest room being rejected. That makes more sense, Emma sighed. You should know she's telling people you already agreed to let them move in, and then suddenly changed your mind after they gave notice. She showed up at Grandma's yesterday in tears about it. The revelation that Tiffany was actively misrepresenting the situation to our grandmother, who at 85 would certainly be distressed by the thought of her granddaughter facing housing insecurity, was the last straw. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I started to drift off, I'd jolt awake with anxiety. The situation was affecting my work. I'd missed a critical deadline that day because I couldn't focus. My boss had been understanding but concerned, suggesting I take a personal day to sort things out. The next morning, Ryan came over with coffee and donuts, a gesture of solidarity that nearly brought me to tears in my sleep-deprived state. You look like hell, he observed, handing me a coffee. Feel like it too, I admitted. Tiffany's telling everyone I promised her my bedroom and then went back on my word. My grandmother called last night crying, asking why I was putting real estate before family. Ryan shook his head. This is manipulation, pure and simple. Your sister is trying to pressure you into giving in by making you the bad guy to everyone else. It's working, I said glumly. My mom called to tell me I should do the right thing before this gets any worse. Like I'm the one escalating this situation. Look, Ryan set down his coffee and fixed me with a serious look. You need to start documenting everything. Save texts, emails, social media posts. And you need to be crystal clear with everyone about what actually happened. I shouldn't have to defend my right to keep my own bedroom in my own house, I protested. No, you shouldn't. But your sister has made this about something else entirely in everyone else's eyes. She's controlling the narrative. Ryan was right. While I'd been trying to handle this privately, Tiffany had been shaping how our family and friends perceived the conflict. It was time to be more direct. I spent that day sending calm, factual messages to family members who had reached out. I want to clarify the situation with Tiffany and Derek. They are not being evicted. Tiffany gave notice on her apartment without speaking to me first, assuming she could have my master bedroom. I've offered them temporary use of a guest room while they find a new place, but that offer was rejected. I'm happy to help in reasonable ways, but giving up my bedroom in my own home is not one of them. The responses were mixed. Some family members understood immediately and apologized for jumping to conclusions. Others, particularly those closer to my parents, maintained that I was being unnecessarily rigid and should just help out family. My grandmother called again, this time less upset and more confused. I don't understand why Tiffany would say you promised something you didn't, she said. That doesn't sound like her. I don't understand it either, Grandma, I replied gently. But I promise I'm not leaving them without options. They're welcome to stay in a guest room while they look for a new place. The stress was taking a physical toll. I developed insomnia, sleeping only a few hours each night. I started getting tension headaches and found myself jumping every time my phone rang. When my boss called me into his office to discuss another missed deadline, I had to confess what was happening. I'm sorry, Alan, I said, rubbing my temples. My sisters created this family drama that's consuming all my mental energy. To my surprise, Alan nodded sympathetically. Family conflicts are among the most stressful life events. Take tomorrow off. Get your head straight. The code will still be here when you get back. His understanding should have been a relief, but instead, it added a new layer of anxiety. Now my personal problems were affecting my professional life, the one area I'd always been able to maintain control over. That evening, as I sat on my balcony trying to find some peace and watching the sunset, my phone rang. It was Derek, calling from a number I didn't recognize. Mason, it's Derek. I'm calling from a work phone. Tiffany doesn't know I'm contacting you. The secretive nature of the call immediately put me on alert. What's going on, Derek? He sighed heavily. I need to apologize. This whole situation, it's gotten out of hand. I never agreed to Tiffany giving notice on our apartment without talking to you first. She told me you had already offered us your master bedroom. The confirmation that Tiffany had been manipulating not just me and our family, but her own fiancé as well, was both validating and deeply troubling. When did you find out that wasn't true? I asked. At your parents' house, when you kept saying she never asked you. At first, I thought you were going back on your word, which is why I didn't say much. But afterward, when I questioned her about it, things didn't add up. Have you found a new place yet? I asked. We've been looking, but Tiffany keeps saying we don't need to because eventually you'll come to your senses. She's convinced your parents can pressure you into giving in. The conversation left me with mixed emotions. On one hand, it was a relief to know that Derek recognized the manipulation at play. On the other, it was clear that Tiffany had no intention of backing down or accepting my boundaries. Ryan's advice echoed in my mind: document everything, be clear about what actually happened, and stand firm on my boundaries. The conflict was intensifying, but I was beginning to see that giving in wouldn't solve the underlying issue. It would only reinforce Tiffany's belief that she could get what she wanted through manipulation and family pressure. As I finally drifted off to sleep that night, I had a feeling that things would get worse before they got better. I had no idea just how right I was. Exactly 17 days after Tiffany's initial visit, I know because I'd been counting down the days until her lease ended, I came home from work to find a moving truck parked in my driveway. For a moment, I sat in my car, staring at it in disbelief. Surely she wouldn't have. But as I approached my front door, there was Tiffany, directing two men carrying a mattress up my walkway. Boxes were stacked on my porch. Derek was unloading more from their car, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and resignation. What is happening right now? I demanded, blocking the mover's path. Tiffany turned to me with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh good, you're home. We can use some help with the heavier furniture. Tiffany, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. Why is there a moving truck in my driveway? Because we're moving in, obviously. She gestured to the boxes. These go to the master. I've already started clearing space in the closet for Derek's things. She'd been in my house. In my bedroom. Without my permission. How did you get in? I asked, feeling a surge of anger and violation. Mom gave me the spare key you left with her for emergencies, she said casually. I figured this qualified. We're on a tight schedule with the movers charging by the hour. Neighbors were beginning to notice the commotion. Mrs. Peterson from across the street was openly watching from her front yard, pretending to water plants that had already been drenched. Stop, I said loudly, addressing the movers. There's been a misunderstanding. Nothing is being moved into this house today. The movers looked uncertainly between Tiffany and me. Ignore him, Tiffany told them. He's just being difficult. Keep unloading. I am the homeowner, I stated clearly. And I did not authorize this move. Please put that mattress back in the truck. One of the movers set down his end of the mattress. Lady, we can't move stuff into a house if the owner says no. That's breaking and entering. He's my brother, Tiffany exclaimed. Tell them, Mason. Tell them we're moving into your spare room. The lie was so blatant it momentarily stunned me. Even now, she was misrepresenting the situation. My sister does not have permission to move into my house today, I said firmly to the movers. I'm sorry you've been put in this position. The movers exchanged glances, then began carrying the mattress back to the truck. Tiffany watched in disbelief before turning on me. What are you doing? She shrieked. Our apartment is empty. The new tenants move in tomorrow. Where are we supposed to go? Derek approached, placing a hand on Tiffany's shoulder which she immediately shrugged off. Tiff, maybe we should. No, she cut him off. Mason is going to fix this right now. Tears began streaming down her face, her voice rising to ensure the gathering audience of neighbors could hear. We have nowhere to go. My own brother is making us homeless. I took a deep breath, acutely aware of the spectacle unfolding on my front lawn. Tiffany, let's talk inside. There's nothing to talk about. You need to tell these movers to bring our things inside right now. I've offered you a guest room temporarily while you find a place. I reminded her, keeping my voice steady. That offer still stands. But this ambush with movers and taking my spare key without permission? This crosses a line. A guest room isn't enough. We need the master bedroom. We're engaged, Mason. We're starting our life together. Why can't you understand that? Derek finally stepped between us. Tiffany, that's enough. Mason's right. We shouldn't have come like this. He turned to me. I'm sorry. This wasn't my idea. Tiffany rounded on him. Whose side are you on? We talked about this. No, you talked about this, Derek replied, his voice uncharacteristically firm. You told me Mason had agreed to the master bedroom. You told me he knew we were coming today. None of that was true, was it? The directness of his question seemed to puncture Tiffany's righteousness. Her expression flickered between anger and something like shame before settling back on indignation. I did what I had to do for us, she insisted. Mason would have said yes eventually. Mom and Dad agree with me. That's not how this works, Derek said, shaking his head. You can't just decide what other people should do with their homes and then act like they're the unreasonable ones when they don't go along with it. The movers had returned from the truck. So, what's the verdict here? We're on the clock. Before Tiffany could speak, Derek turned to them. We're not moving in today. I apologize for the confusion. He reached for his wallet. Let me pay you for your time. Derek. Tiffany gasped. What are you doing? Where are we going to go? We'll figure it out, he said quietly. But not like this. As Derek handled the movers, Tiffany turned back to me, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. This is your last chance, Mason. Either we move into the master bedroom today, or you're dead to me. I mean it. I'll never speak to you again. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. Part of me was tempted to give in, just to end the conflict, just to make peace. The thought of my sister cutting me out of her life was painful, despite everything that had happened. But in that moment, I also had perfect clarity. This pattern would never end if I gave in now. There would always be another demand, another boundary crossed, another manipulation. And each time I capitulated, I would lose a little more of myself, a little more of the home I had worked so hard to create. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said quietly. The guest room is available if you need it temporarily. That's the best I can offer. Tiffany stared at me for a long moment, as if waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she wiped her tears roughly with the back of her hand. You're choosing a bedroom over your sister. I'll never forgive you for this. She turned to Derek. Let's go. We don't need his charity. Tiff, wait. Derek called, but she was already storming to her car. After the movers left, Derek stayed behind on my porch. I'm so sorry about all this, Mason. I had no idea she was planning this. Where will you go? I asked, genuinely concerned despite my anger. My buddy Jack has a couch we can crash on for a few days while we figure things out, he said. I should have seen this coming. Tiffany, she's used to getting her way. When her first plan didn't work, I should have known she'd escalate. Why are you with her, Derek? The question came out before I could stop it. He looked surprised, then thoughtful. She's not always like this. She can be incredibly loving, generous, fun. But when she doesn't get her way... He trailed off, then shook his head. We have things to work on. I know that. The guest room offer is open to you too, I said. Even if Tiffany doesn't want it. Thanks, but I think some space might be good right now. He extended his hand. I really am sorry about this. After Derek left to follow Tiffany, I went inside and collapsed on my couch, emotionally drained. The house that had always been my sanctuary now felt tainted by the conflict. I walked through each room, checking for anything Tiffany might have moved or taken, and found several of my dresser drawers emptied, their contents piled on the floor to make room for her things. The violation of my space left me feeling sick. I called a locksmith to change the locks, then sent a text to my parents asking for the return of all spare keys. My mother responded immediately with a phone call I let go to voicemail. Her message was predictably one-sided. Mason, Tiffany just called us sobbing. I can't believe you would turn her away like this. Your father and I are very disappointed. Family should come first. Call us when you're ready to discuss this reasonably. I didn't call back. Instead, I poured myself a drink and sat on my balcony, watching the last of the sunset, trying to process the emotional whirlwind of the day. The guilt I'd been feeling began to give way to anger, then to a strange sense of peace. For the first time since this all began, I felt certain I had done the right thing. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Just checking in. How'd today go? I typed back. Tiffany showed up with a moving truck. It didn't go well. But I think it's finally over. His response came quickly. Proud of you for standing your ground. This beer won't drink itself. Coming over. As I waited for my friend, I realized something important. The family I was born into might never fully understand or respect my boundaries. But the family I had chosen, friends like Ryan who supported me unconditionally, they were just as important. And right now, that was enough. The week after the moving truck incident was eerily quiet. No calls from Tiffany, no texts from my parents, no family members reaching out with opinions or questions. It was as if I'd been excommunicated from the Mitchell family, exactly as Tiffany had threatened. The silence was both a relief and profoundly unsettling. I'd spent my entire life as part of a close-knit, if sometimes dysfunctional, family unit. Now I found myself floating free, cut loose from the familial ties that had both supported and constrained me. At first, I threw myself into work, making up for the productivity I'd lost during the weeks of conflict. I stayed late at the office, took on extra projects, and avoided the empty silence of my house. But avoidance is never a sustainable strategy. By the weekend, the emotional toll caught up with me. I found myself standing in my master bedroom, the room that had become the centerpiece of so much conflict, and wondering if it had been worth it. The king-sized bed, the walk-in closet, the ensuite bathroom with its rainfall shower, the small balcony overlooking the backyard, all the features I'd worked so hard to create now seemed hollow without family to share my life with. Maybe I am selfish, I said aloud to the empty room. The thought plagued me throughout the day. That evening, desperate for perspective, I called Emma, the cousin who'd reached out to hear my side earlier. I haven't heard from anyone in the family for a week, I told her after we exchanged greetings. It's like I've been erased. Emma sighed. It's complicated. Tiffany's telling everyone you left her homeless, that she and Derek had to separate because they couldn't find a place they could both afford. They separated? This was news to me. I offered them a guest room. Derek seemed to understand the situation. From what I gather, they had a big fight after leaving your place. Derek went to stay with a friend, and Tiffany moved in with your parents. She's spinning it as you destroying her engagement. The manipulation was so blatant it would have been laughable if it weren't so effective. And people are believing this? Some are. Others have questions. I've been telling people your side when I can, but... She trailed off. But what? Maybe you should reach out more directly. Send an email to the extended family explaining what happened. Some people want to support you but don't know the full story. Emma's suggestion made sense. That night, I drafted a calm, factual email explaining the situation from my perspective, including Tiffany's unannounced arrival with movers and the discovery that she'd entered my home without permission. I sent it to my extended family, not expecting much response. To my surprise, several relatives replied with messages of support. My Aunt Patricia wrote, I thought something didn't add up in Tiffany's version. Thank you for clarifying. Uncle Robert, my father's brother, was more direct. This entitlement didn't come from nowhere. My brother and sister-in-law have always let Tiffany get away with too much. Stand your ground. The support was validating, but the core issue, the silence from my immediate family, remained. After 2 weeks without contact, I decided to seek professional help. Ryan had suggested therapy several times, and now it seemed like the right step. Dr. Levine, a family therapist with a gentle demeanor and incisive questions, helped me see patterns I'd been blind to my entire life. What you're describing is a classic family system with rigid roles, she explained during our second session. You've been cast as the responsible one, the caretaker, while your sister has been the one who needs taking care of. When you refused to play your assigned role, it threatened the entire system. But I've always helped Tiffany when I could. I protested. This was just too much to ask. Exactly. Dr. Levine nodded. You set a boundary, which is healthy. But in a family system that doesn't value boundaries, that's seen as an act of betrayal. Over the following weeks, our sessions helped me understand that my guilt wasn't about the specific situation with the bedroom, but about breaking free from family expectations. I wasn't responsible for Tiffany's housing crisis. She had created that herself. I wasn't obligated to sacrifice my own well-being to solve problems she had manufactured. As I gained clarity in therapy, I also began renovating one of my guest bedrooms. Not for Tiffany, that ship had sailed, but as a potential rental space. Converting the room into a comfortable studio apartment with a separate entrance and kitchenette gave me a productive outlet for my energy and a potential source of income. A month after the moving truck incident, I received an unexpected text from Derek. Can we meet for coffee? Just me. We arranged to meet at a cafe downtown, neutral territory away from family dynamics. Derek looked tired but more centered than the last time I'd seen him. Tiffany and I are in counseling, he said after we'd exchanged pleasantries. I moved back in with her last week, but we're taking things slowly. The wedding's been postponed. I'm sorry to hear that, I said and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish my sister unhappiness. Don't be. It's for the best. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. The therapist is helping us work through some issues. Tiffany's beginning to see how her actions affected you. She's not ready to admit it to you yet, but she knows she crossed lines. That's good to hear, I said cautiously. I want you to know that I've found us an apartment. It's small, but it's ours. No more assumptions about living arrangements. He smiled wryly. I'm making sure all expectations are crystal clear between us now. That sounds healthy, I replied. How are my parents taking all this? Derek hesitated. They're still very protective of Tiffany. But your Aunt Patricia had a long talk with your mom last week. I think she's starting to question some things. The conversation with Derek left me hopeful that perhaps, with time, relationships could be repaired. Not immediately, and not without changes on all sides, but possibly. The following week, I received a text from my mother. Your father and I would like to come see your house renovations. Are you free this weekend? The message was neutral, making no mention of the conflict, but it was an opening. I agreed to their visit with cautious optimism. When they arrived, the interaction was awkward but civil. My mother commented on the guest room renovations, and my father inspected my handiwork with professional interest. We carefully avoided mentioning Tiffany until, over coffee in the kitchen, my mother finally broached the subject. Your Aunt Patricia says we've been too hard on you, she said, studying her cup. That we've always expected you to accommodate Tiffany. I waited, sensing there was more. I don't entirely agree with her, my mother continued. Families should support each other. But perhaps we've asked more of you than was fair. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my mother, it was significant. My father cleared his throat. The house looks good, son. You've done well here. Built something to be proud of. Coming from my father, a man of few words and fewer compliments, this was high praise indeed. The visit ended with tentative plans for dinner the following month. As they left, my mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "We love you, Mason. Always remember that." That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, feeling a weight lifting that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The journey wasn't over. There would be more conversations, more boundaries to maintain, more growth on all sides, but for the first time in months, I felt hopeful about my family relationships. Dr. Levine had told me something in our last session that resonated deeply. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away. It's about teaching them how to be close to you in a way that's healthy for everyone. I was beginning to understand what that meant in practice. By standing firm on my boundaries, even when it was painful and difficult, I was creating the possibility for more authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or manipulation. As for Tiffany, time would tell. Derek's updates suggested she was doing important work in therapy, beginning to recognize patterns that had damaged her relationships. I hoped that was true, for her sake as much as for our families. The master bedroom that had become such a flashpoint no longer felt tainted by conflict. It was once again my sanctuary, my reward for years of hard work, the physical manifestation of my independence and self-respect. But now it represented something more, my willingness to stand up for myself, to value my own needs, and to require others to do the same. That night, I slept better than I had in months, wrapped in the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've done the right thing, not just for yourself, but ultimately for everyone involved. 6 months after the moving truck incident, I was hosting a family dinner at my house. It wasn't something I would have imagined possible during the height of the conflict, yet here we were, my parents, 2 aunts and their husbands, Emma and her boyfriend, and most surprisingly, Tiffany and Derek. The journey to this moment had been gradual. After my parents' initial visit, we'd established a new rhythm of monthly dinners, sometimes at their house, sometimes at restaurants, and now, finally, at mine. Each meeting had been slightly less strained than the last, as we carefully rebuilt our relationships on more solid foundations. Tiffany and I had our first direct conversation 3 months after the conflict, a carefully neutral coffee meeting arranged by our mother. It had been brief and somewhat stilted, but civil, a necessary first step. Since then, we'd had several more conversations, each a little more honest than the last. "Mason, these steaks are amazing," my father commented, cutting into the perfectly grilled ribeye I'd prepared. "You've become quite the chef." "Thanks, Dad." Ryan introduced me to dry aging. "Makes all the difference." Around the table, conversations flowed naturally, Emma discussing her recent promotion, my Aunt Patricia describing her garden renovations, my mother sharing gossip from her book club. The tension that had dominated family gatherings for months had finally dissipated. After dinner, as everyone moved to the living room for dessert, Tiffany approached me in the kitchen where I was brewing coffee. "Need any help?" she asked, hesitant in a way the old Tiffany never would have been. "Sure. Cups are in the cabinet above the dishwasher." We worked side by side for a moment, the silence broken only by the gurgle of the coffee maker. "Your house looks great," she said finally. "The guest room apartment especially. Have you found a renter yet?" "Not yet. I'm being pretty selective. It's still my house, after all." She nodded, understanding the subtle reference to our conflict. "That makes sense." Another pause. "Mason, I've been wanting to say this for a while now. I'm sorry for what happened. For all of it, demanding your bedroom, giving notice on my apartment without talking to you, showing up with the moving truck. It was wrong, and I see that now. The apology, delivered without qualifications or excuses, caught me off guard. In our previous conversations, we'd skirted around direct acknowledgments, focusing instead on moving forward. Thank you for saying that," I replied, genuinely touched. "It means a lot. Therapy has helped me see some patterns." She continued, arranging cookies on a plate. "I've always expected things to work out for me because they usually did. People, especially family, would rearrange their lives to accommodate what I wanted. When you didn't, I didn't know how to handle it." "It was a difficult time for everyone," I acknowledged. "I'm sorry if my boundaries felt harsh." "They weren't harsh." She shook her head. "They were normal. I was the one being unreasonable." She smiled ruefully. "Derek and I have our own place now. It's small, and sometimes I still catch myself thinking how much nicer your master bedroom would be. But then I remind myself that we're building our own home, our own life. And that feels good, you know? Like it's really ours." Her words revealed a maturity I hadn't seen in my sister before. "I'm proud of you, Tiff. That's not easy growth." "Definitely not," she agreed. "But necessary. Derek and I are in a much better place now. The wedding's back on for next spring, by the way. You'll be getting an official invitation soon. I'd be honored to be there." As we carried coffee and dessert to the waiting family, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer evening. The relationships in the room had been tested, broken in some cases, but were now healing, not into their old patterns, but into something new and potentially stronger. My parents had gradually come to respect my boundaries, even if they didn't always understand them. Our conversations had become more authentic, less burdened by unspoken expectations. My father had even asked for my input on some renovations he was planning for their house, a request that would have been unthinkable a year ago. After dessert, as everyone migrated to the backyard to enjoy the pleasant evening, Derek pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For standing your ground. It forced Tiffany and me to confront some issues we might have otherwise ignored. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. You seemed to understand the situation even back then," I observed. He nodded. "I did, mostly. But I was caught in the middle, trying to support Tiffany while knowing she was in the wrong. It wasn't until the moving truck day that I realized how enabling that was." From the backyard came the sound of laughter, my mother and Tiffany, heads together over something amusing on a phone screen. The sight would have seemed impossible months ago. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself standing in my master bedroom doorway, reflecting on everything that had transpired. This room, this house, had become the catalyst for profound changes in my family dynamics. By defending my space, I had ultimately created the opportunity for healthier relationships with clearer boundaries and more authentic communication. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments of intense pain, doubt, and loneliness. But standing here now, I wouldn't change the decisions I'd made. Sometimes, the hardest boundaries to set are the most necessary ones. Later, after everyone had left and I was enjoying the peaceful quiet of my home, I realized something important. Self-respect isn't selfish. It's the foundation upon which all healthy relationships must be built. By valuing myself enough to maintain boundaries, I had actually given my family the opportunity to relate to me in a more genuine way. The master bedroom that had been the center of so much conflict was once again just a bedroom, a nice one, certainly, but no longer laden with symbolic weight. It was mine not because I had fought for it, but simply because I had earned it, created it, and chosen it for myself. And that was enough. Before I went to sleep that night, I decided to open the French doors to the balcony, letting in the cool night air and the gentle sounds of the neighborhood settling down for the night. As I stood there, I thought about how far we'd all come, and how much further we might go. What boundaries have you had to set with family or friends? Did standing your ground ultimately strengthen your relationships, even through difficult moments? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if you found this story helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to maintain healthy boundaries, even with the people closest to you. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, respecting yourself isn't selfish, it's essential to building authentic connections with others.